In spite of being only 6 years old, she knew her mother was different. Bipolar was the word adults used. So when she had to choose, she chose to stay with her father, and her mother left for Vancouver Island. As a teenager, she started stealing, using alcohol. To save herself, she moved west to be with her mother, but in no time her drinking and her mother's erratic behavior had them fighting all the time. In grade 11, her mother kicked her out of the house. Still, she managed to graduate with over $10,000 in scholarships. She enrolled in political science at the University of Victoria, and life held nothing but promise. Except that no one knew a time bomb was ticking, and no less than total devastation was in store for Andrea Paquette. Andrea graduated from university with a degree in political science and began to work for the British Columbia government. To the world, she was smart, determined, and highly motivated. But behind the facade, seemingly from nowhere, crippling depression began spreading its icy tentacles into her soul. Panic attacks came on without warning, dropping her to her knees, gasping for air. She felt like death was staring her in the face. A failed attempt to get nominated to run in the federal election led to a decision to move to Ottawa. She packed everything into her 1996 Neon, including her ticking time bomb that was about to explode. In Ottawa, when she couldn't find a job, a crippling psychosis began to overtake her. She couldn't concentrate, couldn't taste her food. She gave away her grandmother's diamond ring to a stranger in a wheelchair. She called on her next-door neighbor while she was stark naked. She alienated her roommates. She stayed awake longer and longer and wrote election strategies designed to make her prime minister. And then, when finally she didn't sleep for 3 days, the few friends she had left managed to get her into an emergency psych ward. She was 26 years old. The diagnosis? Andrea had bipolar disorder. Medication reduced her psychosis, and Andrea struggled to rebuild her life. She found work, 2 menial jobs that allowed her to save to go back to Vancouver Island. Her medication affected her mood, induced strange, unpleasant feelings. So she made the decision to go off her medication and shortly thereafter arrived in Victoria. Sick, alone, unbearably depressed. It was more than she could stand. No friends, no work, self-medicating with Valium every night, wanting only to sleep all day. Finally, she carefully wrote a letter and placed it where it could be found next to her body. And then she swallowed a handful of pills. She committed suicide. She was 26 years old. She was found on the floor convulsing and foaming at the mouth. When she woke in the hospital, she was devastated not to have died. She was introduced to a psychiatrist who finally seemed to understand her. Little by little, he helped her stabilize. Yet barely a month later, she left Victoria to teach English in South Korea. She excelled at teaching, but her recovery faltered. Regulating her medication was nearly impossible. She added to her stress by trying to hide the fact that she was bipolar from her colleagues. Soon, she was self-medicating with alcohol and drugs. It was time to come home. It was time to change her life for good. As Andrea left alcohol and drugs behind her, life began to stabilize. She found a job with the Ministry of Social Development. She began to speak publicly about her mental health challenges, first to a few people, then to large groups. Audiences sit in rapt attention as Andrea describes her journey. Charismatic, smart, funny, and completely open, she easily engages with her audience. And the more she spoke, the more she began to accept her illness, an essential step for what was to come next. Andrea created a t-shirt that read, "Bipolar Babe," and that was a catalyst for an idea, a website for people managing bipolar disorder. With its creation, the media began to pick up on Andrea's powerful message: bipolar disorder is manageable. Almost before she knew it, Bipolar Babe evolved into the Bipolar Disorder Society of British Columbia, complete with a board of directors, charitable status, and funding from organizations large and small. The society hosts programs for people managing bipolar disorder with an emphasis on young people. They create conversations free of stigma and educate the community. They proclaim the message that no matter what our challenges, we can all lead extraordinary lives. As their leader, Andrea generously and honestly shares her story for those who need hope, for those who need to understand. Most of all, Andrea shares her story for those whose path is desperate and dark, guiding them along the way through the light of her incredible courage to come back.